Hello, everyone. I think I am a minute early, but it's always better to be early than late. I am gonna wait. I'm not gonna start my topic yet. We are at 7:15 now. Can anyone give me a heads up that you can hear me? Hello, everyone. Okay. Once again, I am with you guys. Very happy to be here. My name is Lavleen. I am a naturopathic doctor from Canada, and originally I am from India, as you can probably tell, even from my name. So basically, I moved to Canada when I was quite young, did my studies here, and then did naturopathic medicine. Uh, Today, the topic I'm covering is very close to my heart and it is very personal to me. So, I'm talking about food addiction today. So, first of all, what is food addiction, right? A lot of people say addiction and food. How is that possible? Is it even possible that you could be addicted to food? It's not that you can just, stop anytime or, hey, food is a necessity. Is it really a necessity? Of course, it's a necessity. Food is an absolute necessity in our life. Well, though there are some breatharians, but there's few or breatharians. However, when it comes to food, yes, isn't it's a necessity. We need food to live in this world. But the question is what kind of food we need and where does food addiction fit into with this need of ours? So really, I'm just trying to think, where did I in my life get into food where I could see that it's actually, or it got to be an addiction for me. I honestly don't know when, but from the youngest, like when I was really, really, really young, I could recall of times of overeating, and going beyond what I could eat just for the pleasure of it, just because it made me feel good and not because it was there to fulfill a need in me, or a necessity to for sustenance. It was way more than that. There were times actually, I'd overeat so much it would be like almost to the extent of throwing up. So where does this come from? I have just a few answers from my personal life and a little bit from a lot of reading, listening to, experts about many years ago. So basically, I grew up as a normal child. I wasn't overweight, a regular childhood. But then it came around the age of 16 when I started gaining a lot of weight and I started eating a lot of sugary foods. These sugary foods were ice creams, cookies, candies, chocolates, you name it, and I could eat it. And I could eat a lot of sweets. Not like normal people, stop after one. I could just eat because it just made me feel good and I kept eating. So anyhow, I ended up gaining a lot of weight. And then in my 30s, or even late 20s, I got this realization a little bit only, like, why am I eating? And there could be times where I would, start dieting and I'd lose weight. And then after that, it would be the same thing again. What would really happen? It I gain all the weight back. And a lot of us who've struggled with weight, we know this is a common thing. You see somebody lose weight and it's like, wow, you look so good, or, everything. Oh, you don't have those health issues because you've lost weight. But then a year later, you see them again back to the weight they were and a little bit more. And that's exactly my life story since I was about 16 years old. I didn't quite start maybe dieting or watching what I was eating probably till about 20 or so, and then the cycle started. So I was able to like get on a very good diet or get on a specific diet plan, lose the weight and be really happy, feeling good in my body. And then what would happen? Somehow, somewhere, it just would go all haywire, and I'd start eating again. So just a comment, I want to make this an interactive session. So if I can see some comments, that'd be really good. Especially if any of the viewers, I know we only have, few viewers right now. If any one of you know of somebody or you yourself have experienced that, that'll be really great, because I want to make it an interactive session and hopefully help somebody who's experienced that. So anyhow, back to my story. This kept happening again and again, to the extent that I was almost 200 pounds at a point. But, I was still happy overall. I was never a depressed person. I don't really recall being anxious. If subconsciously I was, I don't know. Then about few years ago, I really felt that, okay, no, something is not right. I am in this cycle and I just can't get out of it. So I started researching a lot, started looking at a lot of things, and never even heard of the word food addiction. Then I came across this lady, Susan Pierce Thompson. She's from the US. She's done a PhD in food psychology. She even had something like, there was these questions I had to answer, and she called it the susceptibility scale. So I answered all those questions, and honestly, if I was 9 out of 10, means I answered yes to 9 out of the 10 questions. That kind of put me in a category of a person who was susceptible to be addicted. Okay. So I was like, wow, that's quite interesting. Because, I'm not a person who smokes. I barely ever drink, maybe one drink in a year, and there's no other addiction I could think of. I've never tried drugs. I'm like, food addiction, that's really, really odd. So I started reading about it. I started studying about it. I got into a support group with Susan, and then I really realized what it was. I was following that same pattern every time. So that happened about 3-4 years ago, where I was able to get to my ideal weight. Okay. And very happy, all good. But then about 6, maybe 9 months into it, and so in that time means I hadn't had any sugar, no sugar at all. And it's not even that I was craving it. I actually absolutely wasn't craving it. I was feeling very good, amazing, eating healthy foods. So one day it was like, no, I think I can do that. So I ended up having a slice of cake at my daughter's birthday. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm like, okay, it's just one day, tomorrow I don't have to eat it again. But you wouldn't believe it. A year later, I noticed myself still craving the sweets every single day. Every single day. And guess what? I gained all that weight that I had lost. So that really got me into this mind of thinking, of seeing that what it is that is causing me or anybody else to eat foods that we don't want to eat. So a lot of experts don't even believe there's such a thing as food addiction, just by the definition that food is a necessity for life. However, I'm just going to read a few definitions of what addiction is. So the simple definition from the dictionary is physically and mentally dependent on a particular substance. That is the definition of addiction. So honestly, if you look at it, if there's a certain food that I just cannot let go, even when my mind, when my body even says it doesn't feel good with it, but if I'm still eating it, what does that mean? Is it an addiction? So now I'm going to read the definition of the American Society of Addiction Medicine. A primary chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. Dysfunction in these circuits leads to characteristic biological, psychological, social, and spiritual manifestations. This is reflected in an individual pursuing reward and or relief of substance use and other behaviors. So if now just put in this substance as food, addiction is characterized by inability to consistently abstain, impairment in behavioral control, craving, diminished recognition of significant problem with one's behavior, and there's other things like interpersonal relationship, dysfunctional emotional response. So people who eat certain foods and they're not able to stop themselves, or they eat the food to satisfy an emotional need, or they eat that food to numb themselves, or when somebody, if you've had a fight with somebody, or just because you're feeling low. So when food is being used in that sense, then it has the potential of being an addiction. Okay, so it's really as simple as that. Then we go on to the American Psychiatric Association, a complex condition. So they call the addiction a complex condition, a brain disease that is manifested by compulsive substance use despite the harmful consequence. Okay, so you know that eating a certain amount of food is causing some pain, you know that there may be some inflammation, you know that it's causing weight gain, but you don't have the ability to be able to stop eating those foods. Okay, people with addiction have an intense focus on using a certain substance, such as alcohol or drugs they're talking about, to the point that it takes over their life. In my case, it was food. I even dreamt about food. If at any time I did dieting, I would dream of food being all around me and me wanting to eat. So a person who doesn't have that addiction for food, they would just be able to, just stop after one cookie, or after one candy, or after one slice of cake. But a person who has an addictive behavior is not able to stop. They can eat the entire box of chocolates like I could. I could eat 2 boxes of chocolates. I can't see myself do that right now because I've done a lot of work on myself on understanding, where that comes from. But when we are not aware, we do that. And even now, like as recent as, maybe 3-4 months ago, I had gone into that behavior. When I'm eating, I'm just sitting in front of the TV and eating when my body doesn't need it, when I've had dinner, when I'm full. So why does a person eat when they're already full? That's definitely not to satisfy a hunger. That's definitely not to satisfy a normal need for food. Okay, so are we a little bit clear on, yes, that food can be addictive, but what kind of food? We cannot. Does anybody overeat on food that's naturally made in the universe, on our planet, like fruits, like vegetables? I don't think you've heard anybody, I overate on apples. I overate on carrots, or I overate on my vegetables. Usually it's on, and if it is vegetables, it's usually laden with a lot of artificial fat, a lot of salt, and then you can overeat because these substances can also be addictive. But mainly it's the sugar, the fat, and the salt. And the regular amount of sugar that's in a fruit is fructose. It's not addictive because it comes with a whole variety of nutrients, but sugar of a candy, sugar of a chocolate, sugar of our Indian mithais, these are addictive. There's enough studies that have been done which show how addictive sugar is. Even to the extent there's animal studies been done where it was shown that sugar can even be more addictive than cocaine, so than a drug. Okay, so what is addiction? Addiction is a craving for mood altering effects. Okay, and food does do that. Sugar does do that. High salty and fatty foods do that because they kind of put you in like a coma or a trance if you've overeaten. Also, it could be a loss of control of amount or frequency of use. So if a person finds themselves, as doing that for food, so you don't have, I totally did not have control over my food. If I started eating a piece of cake, 2 minutes later I was done eating that. I needed more. That just wasn't satisfactory. I could eat a second, I could eat a third, I could be full after the third piece, but I still craved for it 5 minutes later. So what is that if it's not addiction? Okay, so today I'm just basically, I guess, making you think about this, because I really had to think about it. I had to understand how food can actually be addictive. But it's not our regular food, it's artificial foods. The food that's being manufactured in factories, in manufacturing plants, to add certain chemicals, to add certain sugars, to add certain amount of fat, the right amount of salt, the right amount of fat, the right amount of sugar, the right amount of crunch in a potato chip, that it will lead you to craving more and more. Then an addiction also has the thing of compulsive use of the substance. Okay, so loss of control, the compulsive use, and continued use despite negative consequences. So I'd be full and I'd be not feeling good. That feeling of fullness is not good. As even a person who's not addicted to food, once in a lifetime or a few times in a lifetime, I'm sure we've all experienced overeating. Maybe some people haven't, but most of us have experienced overeating. You just don't feel good because it makes you feel sluggish. It makes you maybe even give you a physical tummy ache. And any normal person would not do it again because they have that memory. But a person who's addicted to food, they will do it again because the addiction is stronger than that feeling that they experience, the memory of that feeling, or knowing that eating certain amount of food is going to make me gain weight or make my knees hurt or may give me a headache. Whatever the consequences of eating like that, the addiction overpowers that. So you continue the use of it despite negative consequences. So addiction is usually only used in terms of alcohol, only used in terms of drugs, but the sugar, the fat, and the salt in a food acts like a drug. Okay, so a substance use disorder criteria in the DSM-5, which is the Psychiatric Diagnostic Manual, says this for food addiction. I'm just going to read it. Okay, consuming a substance in greater amounts or over longer periods of time than intended. That's number one. Number two is having a persistent desire or unsuccessfully attempting to decrease or limit substance use. I definitely had that. Spending a significant amount of time acquiring, using, or recovering from a substance. Craving the substance or having a strong urge to use it. So we can definitely use these in terms of food as well, addictive foods. Okay, so also then people will go out of their way. They could be at home and somehow there's no food that they desire, like sugary foods, but they will actually go drive out in the middle of the night to acquire that food. Okay, so these are the things that can lead to those or make you think or make you see that, hey, yes, food addiction is real. So now there are a lot of people, a lot of organizations that have worked researched on food addiction. So there is such an organization and they have a Yale food addiction scale. This is something that's available online. So YFAS. And you can, I'm just going to write that in the comments. Okay, Yale food addiction scale. All right, so this you can look at it. They have like I think a 25 or 28 question, and then you calculate it a certain way, but then there's a short of only about 7 questions. So I'm gonna repeat them, and if there's any people watching, just say a yes or a no to them. Okay, so I find that when I start eating certain foods, I end up eating much more than I had planned. I find myself continuing to consume foods. So that was number 1. Sorry. Number 2 is I find myself continuing to consume foods even though I'm no longer hungry. I was a yes to number 1, yes to number 2. I eat to the point where I feel physically ill. I've definitely done that. That's number 3. Number 4, not eating certain types of food or cutting down on certain types of food is something I worry about. So you're like, oh, am I never be, or will I never be able to eat this? Number 5, I spend a lot of time feeling sluggish or fatigued after overeating. Number 6, I find myself constantly eating certain foods throughout the day. I was definitely doing that. I would have had lunch, and within half an hour, I was like standing in front of the fridge or the pantry looking for a snack, wanting something sweet or wanting something extra salty. I find that when certain foods are not available, I will go out of my way to obtain them. For example, I will drive to the store to purchase certain foods, even though I have other options available at home. Because when you have other options available, it means, if you're hungry, you would eat them. But if you're going out for specific foods to get that kick, that is the beginnings of an addiction. Okay, so basically you answer these questions, and if you get yes probably on a 4/7, then there are tendencies of addiction. Okay, and so this basically just identifies those who are most likely to exhibit markers of substance dependence with the consumption of high fat and high sugary foods. That's basically the foods that are addictive. Okay, all right, so that's the addiction scale, and I honestly answered yes to 6 out of those 7. Okay, so now I want to go into what are the things that could be or no, let's talk about research first. There has been research. There are people who've researched on food addiction specifically, many human studies and many animal studies as well. So when I looked into the research of it, there was a systematic review on food addiction. There were about 52 studies done between the time of 1999 and 2017. 22 articles were of human participation and 30 of animal studies. So from this, what is it that they found? Okay, so 47 studies reported results supporting the criteria for food addiction. 2 studies were mixed, and 3 studies reported unsupportive findings. Okay, so that's quite high. Out of 52 studies, 47 studies actually found criteria supporting food addiction. So basically, what did they find? That the symptoms also, they better fit substance use disorder than behavioral. There's a difference. So they actually supported that yes, this is an addictive behavior. Then they support the validity of food addiction as a diagnostic construct, particularly as it relates to foods high, like I mentioned, in added sweetness or refined ingredients. So that would be sugars, white salt, refined fats, and also sweeteners. And the majority of studies in the current review reported evidence for symptoms related to neurological changes. So it's not just that you're just doing it, but there are actual neurological changes and impaired control that happens that we can actually label food addiction as a real diagnosis. So the researchers of that study proposed that the food addiction construct merits serious attention in regard to and its presentation, prevention, and treatments in human. So that kind of gives you, hey, yes, there is definitely something here that we should look at. Why is it that some people can't stop eating certain amounts of food? So when I see, like in my own family and in my own friend circle, a person puts some food in their plate, they eat it and they're satisfied. But that wasn't the case with me. I would eat it, I'd feel happy, but then I want to go again for another piece of chocolate, for another piece of cookie, for another piece of chips. So that's where I realized that this is something I need to look at, a different way of solving this, rather than just as, hey, let me cut down, a little bit, let me do moderation. So that's another word, moderation. Some people, you'll hear your friends and family say, hey, don't worry about it, just eat in moderation. But would you say that to a person who's an alcoholic? Just have your drink in moderation. Or would you say that to a person who's a drug addict? No, just have your cocaine in moderation and you'll be okay. But it doesn't work that way, because for an addict, there's no such thing as moderation. Because actually it's you've got your frontal cortex, which is the intelligent brain, and you've got your midbrain, which has the survival instinct, the all the receptors like the dopamine and all that, those get acted up. It goes into hyperdrive when you're in stress. So some people are more susceptible to that part of the brain being more active when you're stressed, or if you've eaten something, then wanting more and more. So we really need to take a look at that, and that may be a solution in helping some people who just cannot just say, okay, I'll eat in moderation, because there is such a thing that some people cannot do moderation. And I exactly found that so many times, again and again and again, especially since I've become aware of it in the last 4 to 5 years, that I'd be without sugar for a long time and very happy. My body's feeling good. And then that one piece of cake, like I mentioned you, for my daughter's birthday, I'd eat it and then I'd need a fix the next day and the next day and the next day. But in the end, you have to take it a day at a time. And yes, you will relapse, but that's okay. That's not an issue. It's something that we can keep coming to again and again and again and again. And main thing is not to make yourself feel like a victim of something, or a person who cannot control or doesn't have control. We have enough support to do all that, okay? So those were the findings. And now I just want to talk a little bit about the neurotransmitters that are involved in this cascade, and that is serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins, okay? So these neurotransmitters are in our brain. They are needed for different kinds of things, for different feelings, and food does trigger them. But in some cases, in people who have that addictive personality, that little bit of food, it doesn't satisfy. The receptors start down regulating, and then you need more, and then you need more for that satisfaction. And that's exactly what happens with food with some people. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter for desire, for pleasure, for anticipation. And this is one neurotransmitter that down regulates. So, if I'd eat so many grams of sugar or a certain food that's sugary and fat, I'd be feeling very happy. But then if you keep eating that, after a little while, you're going to need more of that substance to give you that feeling. Then there's endorphins. Endorphins are the pain relief, neurotransmitters. These are also triggered when we eat some good foods, or obviously with medication and stuff. Then serotonin is about safety, about ease, about not being alone. So all these feelings are the ones that are triggered by eating food that is that comfort food for you. And the people who are not addictive, who don't have the addictive personality as far as food goes, for them, eating that little bit is satisfactory, and that's enough. They don't need to reach out for more. But some people do. So like I mentioned about the cortex and the midbrain, okay? So food increases all these neurotransmitters and hence those feelings. But when our brain down regulates it, then we need more and more of that substance to feel the same way, okay? So I'm just reading a quote. Healthy pleasure brings satisfaction. Addictive pleasure brings a craving for more. So you have to see in your own life, is it just a pleasure of satisfaction, or is it you get a higher craving for more, or can you just eat one cookie and be satisfied, okay? So that's the thing. So I just want to mention my influencers. I've already mentioned Susan Pierce Thompson. Her program is Bright Line Eating. That's the first person I got connected to where I actually realized that how food can have an addictive behavior. Even though prior to that, I was doing a lot of mindfulness techniques, coming into awareness, because I've been meditating for a while there. What is it that I'm searching for in food, in my life? Like, what is it that I'm not able to fulfill which I'm trying to fulfill from food. So I had that meditation. I would come into awareness, but then when I would actually be in front of that food, my mind would be having a totally different dialogue. So I'll mention that later as well. Then Dr. Vera Tarman, I've just come into connection with her. She's actually a Canadian. Then there's Sandra Ilya, also Canadian. These are people just in my research, I found after listening to a lot of podcasts, and then they're literally in my backyard, So Dr. Vera Tarman is an addiction specialist physician. She's from Canada. Sandra Ilya is a person who herself went through this journey, and she's helped a lot of people. She's a counselor. She's helped a lot of people overcome that addiction. Then there's Dr. David Kessler. He was a former commissioner of the American FDA. He was there for many years, and then he got into, he realized how the food industry how the food industry has a lot to say in what kind of foods should come out. They have too much of a say in the government. So he wrote a book of End of Overeating, very, very valuable in understanding how the food industry works. And, it's not that the food industry has a malice intent that this people should get overweight or this people should get addictive. But the food industry, all the companies that manufacture the fast foods, they want people to eat more of their foods. And when you want someone to eat more of their foods, you have to make it attractive. You have to put certain ingredients, certain amount of sugar, fat, and salt to make it so that the person keeps coming again. So many times we've heard this, maybe even in ads, you can't just stop eating one, chip or just a few, 3, 4, 5, 6 chips. Sometimes you've done the whole package and you realize that, because those are the I should say the qualities of that food that make you want more and more, even beyond the addiction. I mean, it's even beyond the normal satisfaction of food, okay, which leads to an addiction. And I want to give credit to my guide, Bhavin Shah, who's, this Practical Spirituality is his baby. It's his, page, and he's helping a lot of us with, different avenues of our lives. And there is actually a live session coming up on Wednesday, which I hope I'll try and put it on here so people who want to attend it can attend it, okay? So those are my influencers as far as learning what food addiction is and then actually overcoming it. I'm still in the process, but it's a beautiful journey because it's taught me so much about myself. It's, as a naturopath, I've been able to help so many people around that as well. So now let's just see personally what are the things that could be. So why you may have struggled, okay? So maybe you've had a history of chronic dieting and restricting, and it's a possibility that you never had this addictive behavior, but because of chronic dieting, chronic restricting food, that you created an artificial environment where when the more you diet, the hungrier you get. So that could downregulate, your neurotransmitters. Then second, it could be exposure to chemically engineered food. So, for example, I believe that for myself, the first 16 years of my life were spent in India. And the way my lifestyle was, we literally go out to eat once a month, maybe. And, growing up in the 70s and 80s, usually it was like that. Our fast food came in a lot later. So when I came to Canada, I had like literally, free, what's the word? I had food all around me. The household that I came and stayed with, there was ice creams, there were cookies, the kids used to eat ice cream every day, cookies every day, chocolates every day. And I was totally not used to that. So I believe that for me, that exposure to the chemically engineered food at that age of 16 led me on this path as well. And the third is faulty thinking patterns. So faulty thinking patterns could be, anxiety or stress, which leads you to find solace in something. And if that solace is food for you, then those could be the reasons why you could be addicted. Okay, excuse me. So whenever you use food as a means to satisfy you more than just satisfy your hunger, it can become an addictive thing. All right, so now the question is, what do we do about it? So first of all, what happens is when you realize that there are some foods that you can get away from, that you want to take out from your diet. So what you do is you formulate a way of okay, these are the things I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna eat them, and you restrict them. When you restrict them, that you're able to do, but then comes something, maybe some expectations, maybe fear, maybe anxiety, maybe a stress from a life situation. When these stresses come about, you introduce those foods again, or you maybe binge at a time. When that happens, then this cycle of guilt and remorse starts. Then you feel shame, and then you can go into a depression. When that happens, then you again recommit. So this addictive cycle keeps going on and on and on. But there comes a point, like it came in my life a few years ago, I'm like, I need to get out of this. How is it I can get out of it? And that's when I started researching. I started realizing, how is it that actually, even realizing the fact that, wait a second, I think I may be one of those people who actually have this addiction cycle, who actually, and today, sitting in front of you, I'm not ashamed to admit that at all. I don't have feelings of guilt around my eating. Yes, if it happens, it's like, okay, let me look at what was going on in my life at that point, which caused this, or okay, so next time, how can I be aware that this trigger, that I won't let this or maybe just be aware, so that this trigger will not lead me down the path of eating. Instead, I have my meditation, I have exercise, I have dancing, I have different forms that allow me um, to gain that satisfaction, to help me relieve the stress that I may be experiencing in that life, instead of going to food. Because I know what happens with food. Then that cycle starts. I will not feel good, I'll feel full. So somehow, some way, we have to come up with a solution for ourselves. So today I'm going to talk about those solutions as well. Okay, okay, we're good with time. All right, so what is the few different solutions for getting rid of a food addiction, if you feel that you are a person who could be addicted to food? Okay, so number one is eliminating processed foods. These are foods laden with sugar, also flours, because when a grain is made into a flour, it has a different it just changes in your body the way it reacts, because it almost reacts like sugars. And then there can be other trigger foods, and these trigger foods are very variable for different people. So you have to find in your life, what is that trigger food other than sugar and flour. So for me, I know certain dairy foods can be. So I mostly do not eat dairy, but there are times that I've noticed that if I ever eat cheese, I want more of it. I want more and more and more. So then in my case, I know that is a trigger food. Any other food, I don't really have a trigger. Or they could be some foods like chips and that, right? So chips, yes, but I don't really gravitate towards that. So that's not a big trigger food for me. So you have to find your trigger food and eliminate that. So in my personal life, when I told you about 3 years ago that I eliminated these foods, just one day after reading Susan's blog, listening to her blog, and going through the support group on a Facebook page, I just eliminated these foods. And from there, I was actually free of those addictions. And I realized that, wow, this is like so empowering, that I am not looking for sugar. I'm not looking for these foods to satisfy my cravings, which I can satisfy in different ways. Have a happy moment with a friend, make a phone call to a friend. So that's where the support system comes in. It's very, very important. And I know in myself, when I got off my healthy eating, the reason was because I stopped the support system. When that stopped, somehow when I slipped one day, I just couldn't pick myself up again. Okay. So next is withdrawal. So when you will quit these foods that are addictive, you will experience some withdrawal, and you have to allow yourself time. It could be 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. So make sure in those days you have enough rest, you have enough support from other people who've experienced this. Then caffeine is a big food that can be also a trigger for craving. So if you feel, if you are a person who, the minute you cut out sugars, you're going to go to caffeine, you definitely need to wean off slowly. So there's ways to wean off of caffeine. Then getting rid of junk food, okay? So how you do that is, if you are eating packaged foods, read the ingredients. If any packaged food has more than 4 to 5 ingredients, it is probably a junk food. Okay, so learn in that sense, you learn to have 3 balanced meals with fresh whole foods. You cannot overeat on fresh whole foods. When your body's satisfied, you feel that, oh yeah, I'm full, my tummy is full, you will automatically stop. And this I'm talking from experience. Then water, make sure you're having enough water, because a lot of times dehydration can feel like, oh, you're hungry, but really it's thirst. So make sure you're drinking enough water. For me, the solace was just having herbal teas. So when I started having my 3 square meals and not having any snacks in between, initially I wasn't used to that. So I would drink a nice cup of herbal mint tea. That was my favorite go-to. In the evening, it would be chamomile, or just some herbs and spices from your cupboard. So, saunf and ajwain, which is fennel, and caraway seeds. I just crush a little bit and pour hot water on it and drink them, and it was amazing. Cinnamon is amazing. Cinnamon is actually helpful also in curbing those cravings. Okay. Next, like I mentioned, meditation. So mindful and spirituality are really important factors which you need to include in your life, because they will help you become aware. They will help you notice when there's a trigger for you, so you don't have to reach out in your fridge or your pantry. Next is getting enough sleep and restful periods throughout the day. So if you're not getting enough sleep, our brain automatically wants other ways of stress relief. And also there is a study where when you're stressed or when you're not getting enough sleep, you have higher cravings. So you definitely don't want things in your life which are going to increase those cravings. Also avoid perfectionism and self-criticism. That's a big issue in people who have addiction, because what happens is, if for some reason you go off your diet and then you just beat yourself over it, so that's something that you don't want to do. If you go off, hey, it's just one day. Instead of starting this dialogue in your head, oh, now I'm not going to be able to do it, or if I do it, oh, let me just do the entire day and tomorrow I'll start. There's no tomorrow. It's really only this moment. Okay, so you have to figure that out for yourself. So a few other things, write down addictive foods and trigger foods that are for you. Okay, they definitely have to be eliminated. And a lot of times I see people tell me, and even I myself, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get to eat this food again. Don't think about that. Just think about today. How is it today? Can you not eat it right now in this moment? In this moment, I'm saying no to this food. When tomorrow comes, we'll see. So it's just this moment. Then look at it. Are you overeating due to anxiety? Because that's a big trigger in many people. So find other ways to deal with that anxiety. Like I mentioned, meditation, exercise, dancing, some creative writing. So whatever it is, you have to find it in yourself. What makes you calm? What makes you, you know, get away from the anxiety instead of going to food and some other behavior. Okay, so the effective intervention is to recognize that we have a moment of choice, and it's only that moment that matters. Anything else doesn't matter. Okay, and then slowly and slowly these moments start adding up, and you can be free of addiction. Okay, so also you need to realize certain traps in your life. Is it when I go to a party it happens, or there are some family members that force me to eat, or it's like when somebody says, or in your mind, oh no, I cannot eat this. That's when it happens. Or you go to a holiday, and if you get off track, no issues. You have to know those triggers. So identify a solution for those traps, that hey, if this happens, what is my solution? If this happens, just like I told you for anxiety, find a solution. What is it? And then learn to understand your own sabotaging thoughts. That's what I had to do. Mine was, oh, now I've gone off the plan. Today I can eat for the rest of the day. No, it's just in that moment. In the next moment, you get off of it. Okay, so these are few things that you have to see. All right, I think my time is up, so I'm just gonna see if there's anything else. So I just want to say my stories that my mind told me. Oh, have a little bit, you can handle it. Don't worry, you can start the diet tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes, it's today, okay? Or like saying, oh, this portion is too small, you'll be hungry later. No, just enjoy this. When you eat even a small piece of food, but mindfully, it goes a long way. Okay, then you've eaten it properly. But if you're sitting in front of the TV, you're talking to 10 people and eating, your body's not realizing that. Okay, and another thing was, oh no, I can just do it now and I'll be okay tomorrow. No, these are all my sabotaging thoughts that I had. And okay, so that's really it. The main thing I'd want to leave you is, if you realize any of these things are part of you, or if anybody else does, please go and first of all seek help. Second of all, support. If you are not finding anybody, this Facebook Live is going to be on. You can attend it even after it's gone off live. So please write your comments. I'll be checking comments for the next few days, and I hope that I've helped you in this session, just a little bit of thinking, hey, can this be real? Is this something that's in my life or in the life of my loved one? Let me take a look at it and let me see what I can do. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you for being with me, and thank you to the people who will watch this afterwards. Take care. Bye-bye.